Next on Unsolved Mysteries. When a 17-year-old goes hunting in the woods, he doesn't realize that someone is hunting him. She was America's first lady of flight until her fatal plane crash in the South Pacific. New evidence suggests that Amelia Earhart was executed on a remote island.
Don't turn around or I'll kill you.
A gunman steals almost $250,000 from a casino. But then the victims become the suspects. A shootout in a bar. 2 police officers are ambushed by a crazed ex-con. The gunplay turns deadly. Cunning, deceit, and lies. Can you figure out who's telling the truth? I'm Dennis Farina, and this is Unsolved Mysteries. Join us. Mesquite, Nevada, 80 miles from Vegas.
I didn't think that he was going to leave any witnesses. I really didn't. And he had the perfect opportunity to kill us and leave us.
This man, who we'll call Jim, says that he was the victim of an armed robbery. The FBI, however, considers Jim a suspect. Jim worked as a security guard at a local casino in Nevada. One summer day, he and the assistant cage manager picked up the payroll money at the local bank, then headed back to the casino.
How's the baby doing?
He's doing good. He's sleeping through the night. I've only had 2 bad nights so far.
Oh, well.
Don't make any sudden moves.
Hey.
Shut up, don't say nothing. Don't turn
Wait a
around.
minute.
You make any moves and I'm gonna kill this girl next to you.
No, calm.
Just shut up. Don't turn around or I'll kill you, I said.
I looked to the rearview mirror to see what was going on back there. And he said if I did that again, he was going to blow her brains out right then.
And with your left hand, take your gun out and throw it on the ground. Take your walkie-talkie and throw it on the ground, too.
Okay.
Don't turn around!
Jim was ordered to drive to a deserted area outside of town.
Don't turn around. Keep your hands up!
You know what's going to happen. You're just waiting to catch a bullet. You can feel it. You're just waiting to.
The gunman left without hurting either one of them, but he got away with nearly $250,000 in unmarked bills. From the beginning, authorities believed that the robbery was an inside job. Everyone at the casino became a suspect. Not surprisingly, Jim and the assistant cage manager were at the top of the list. Investigators soon discovered that a number of unusual things happened on the day of the robbery. First, the cage manager and the security chief who normally did the bank runs didn't do them that day. Second, the assistant cage manager decided to make the bank run 2 hours early. Third, this was Jim's first time doing payroll duty. And finally, the van they drove was not the one they normally used.
So the question came up, how was the robber going to be so sure that this was going to be the day that that van was going to make that run? Too much coincidence. Too many times, too many things fell into place. Too many things happened right in this thing. Somebody, in my opinion, gave him some information.
We still had inconsistencies with both of the accounts of the teller and the security officer. Things that just didn't make sense.
He even asked me at one time, why didn't you slam on the brakes? It's a big van. They don't lock up like they do in the movies. You don't click your radio on like they do in the movies and everything goes smooth and everybody hears where you're at and what's going on.
Don't talk.
There was no way I could reach over and key that mic without him knowing about it. Every time that he saw me trying to get a description of him, he would tell me, said he was going to kill us if I did that again, and I didn't want to take that chance.
An hour after the robbery, police found the van. It was parked about a mile south of the spot where the gunman had dumped Jim and the assistant cage manager. Jim's gun and radio were missing.
Coming back from the van, walking around the back to the side.
Police took plaster casts of footprints and tire prints that indicated the robber walked from the van to another vehicle and drove away. Despite a thorough investigation, the police couldn't tie any casino employee to the robbery. But then they got lucky.
About a month and a half after the crime, the Mesquite police were following a simple domestic dispute call in Mesquite, Nevada. There was a gun involved in the dispute, and it turned out that that gun was, in fact, the security officer's weapon that was stolen during the robbery.
The man in the domestic dispute was ruled out as a robbery suspect. So the FBI turned to the man who sold him the gun. His name was Luis Ochoa, the owner of a local pizza parlor.
He was nervous and defensive from the very beginning.
Mr. Ochoa, would it be okay if we go inside and have a talk?
Actually, it's okay. We can talk out here.
He didn't want us to come in the pizza shop. We found that a little bit odd. He immediately set our alerts off that he didn't want us to be there and he really didn't want to talk to us.
I didn't sell anybody any gun. I don't know nothing about any guns. I don't know nothing about the robbery. I'm in the pizza business, guys. I'm not in the gun business.
It was probably a great stroke of luck for us that he kept us outside because we were standing by the pickup truck.
We're here doing our investigation.
During the month and a half after this robbery, I sat and I looked at this plaster casting of a tire print until my eyes were gonna fall out. I knew what the tire print looked like. I looked down at the tires on his truck and they matched.
The FBI searched Ochoa's house and found $5,000 in $100 bills tucked inside the toe of a cowboy boot.
Bring me an evidence bag.
In Ochoa's truck, they also found a bullet. It was the same kind used in Jim's gun.
As the searches were going on, Mr. Ochoa was in fact with an attorney, and they were making arrangements to come and meet with myself to discuss Mr. Ochoa's involvement in the case and possibly his accomplices.
Things were starting to unravel very quickly for him. And I think at that point, Luis decided it was time to get out of Dodge.
And that's exactly what Luis Ochoa did. He left town. The FBI charged him with robbery and kidnapping. Update. Authorities captured Luis Ochoa in Los Angeles. The evidence was insufficient to convict him of robbery, but he pled guilty to a lesser charge of money laundering. He served 3 months and was released. So far, no one else has been charged. Coming up, a routine call sends 2 policemen into a barrage of gunfire. Greenville, South Carolina. 2 gunmen rob a local grocery store. The mastermind is a convicted armed robber named Sam Watke. His 19-year-old son, Richard, waits in the getaway car. Grocery store clerks immediately call the police. Squad cars quickly close in. 2 officers try to set up a roadblock, but before they can get into position, help arrives too late. 47-year-old Valvin Keith, the father of 4, is dead. Within 48 hours, police have arrested all 3 suspects. As the shooter, ringleader, and gunman, Sam Watke is convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison.
We were leaving the courthouse, and he grinned at me, and he said, you know, he said, life isn't nothing. He said, you know, I'm going to get out. He was very confident about it.
More than 8 years later, Watke did just that. He and another inmate used a stolen hacksaw to cut their way to freedom. Just a few minutes before the evening head count, Watke and his accomplice drove through the prison gates and disappeared. Update. Watke remained at large for more than 2 years. But on the night of our broadcast, an Unsolved Mysteries viewer saw the story and called the police. She told them that a man she knew as Michael Allman looked exactly like Sam Watke.
We were able to track down driver's license information on a nationwide driver's license search that eventually led to Louisiana. We called Louisiana authorities, and they faxed us photos of a Louisiana driver's license for Michael Allman, and as soon as they came across the wire, we knew it was Sam Watke.
Louisiana State Police tracked Watke to the flop house where he was staying.
They used distraction devices, flashbangs, and were instantly into the room with a fully armed and ready SWAT team. He had no opportunity to resist at all.
Prison officials were notified immediately.
He said, Mr. Corbett, I hate to wake you up so early in the morning, but I got some good news for you. I said, well, put it on me. He said, we got him.
Happy to be back in South Carolina, are you?
Just love it, man. I love it here.
Sam Watke was sent back to a South Carolina prison to serve out his life term, plus 3 years for his escape. He has since died of a heart attack.
Did you see the story on Unsolved Mysteries on you?
No, I didn't. Missed it.
In the Wild West, a bad guy can simply hightail it out of town and have a very good chance of never getting caught. Today, criminals still figure that they can simply leave town and hide behind an alias and get away scot-free. But it ain't necessarily so. Albuquerque, New Mexico.
I've been hit.
10:25 p.m.
We hit twice. We're real bad in the arm. 332. 32.
Police units respond to the most urgent of all emergency calls. An officer is down.
I knew I was losing a lot of blood, and it was getting hard to breathe because of the wound in my side in my left lung area.
Vic Webb had been a policeman in Albuquerque for 5 years. This incident was the first time that he had ever fired his gun on duty.
What happened?
During the shootout, Webb was struck twice. Without the rapid response of his fellow officers, he would almost certainly have died. The evening started when Officer Rick Foley sat down at the police crime computer. He discovered that a woman he wanted to question happened to have an outstanding arrest warrant.
I was going to check on an outstanding bench warrant, please.
An informant told Foley that the woman hung out at a local bar called Gary's Game Room. Foley and Vic Webb arrived at around 10 p.m.
Another bench warrant?
Yep.
They didn't usually work together, but Webb had volunteered to help Foley serve the warrant.
When we walked in, we noticed some people sitting at a bar off to the left, and a couple of people playing pool.
You guys need some help with something?
Just looking.
Towards the back of the room, there was a dark hallway, so we decided to move towards the back and take a look.
Drop your guns. Give to me now!
This was a situation where we were caught absolutely cold, and here was a guy pointing a gun at us, demanding our weapons.
I'd been out of the academy for approximately 1.5 years, 2 years. My first thoughts were I couldn't believe this was happening to me.
Give me your guns!
His first round hit me in the side. I was wearing a bulletproof vest at the time, but this round went in between the two panels on my side and entered the rib area.
The first shot broke 2 ribs, but Officer Webb managed to pull his own weapon and return fire.
We were probably about 3 feet apart at this time, but he was on one side of the wall and I was on the other side. I had fired 5 to 6 rounds by this time, and he was continuing to fire back through the sheetrock.
A bullet ripped through Webb's right arm, severing an artery and destroying nerves. His shooting hand was now useless. Badly hurt, Webb staggered outside. The suspect picked up Webb's gun and used it to make his escape. The alleged assailant was later identified as Lyle Moody, a paroled armed robber with a criminal record stretching back 17 years.
I would hope that the police officers who run across him the next time know who he is and know how dedicated he is to not going back to prison. My fear is that he's going to be cornered by some other officers who may not know who he is, and more police officers are going to get hurt.
Update. After 18 years on the run, Lyle Moody was busted for loitering. He was hanging around a building in New York City known for drug deals. Moody gave police false identification, but a check of his fingerprints revealed that he was a wanted fugitive. Moody was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 12 years in prison. He served his time and has been released. Coming up, the mysterious final flight of legendary pilot Amelia Earhart. During the 30s, Amelia Earhart was one of the most famous people in the world. She was the first woman to pilot an aircraft across the Atlantic. Part all-American girl, part daredevil, she was way ahead of her time, a self-effacing yet outspoken champion of women's rights.
Men or women, a pilot's a pilot. I hope that such equality could be carried out in other fields, so that men and women may achieve equally in any endeavor they set out.
At the age of 39, Earhart planned what was to be her greatest triumph. She wanted to be the first person, man or woman, to fly around the world at the equator, the longest route around the Earth. Earhart selected Fred Noonan, a former airline pilot, to be her navigator.
Well, as it turned out, Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan never completed their flight. History tells us that they crashed in the South Pacific, but new eyewitness testimony suggests that history has it wrong.
Oakland, California, May 20th, 1937. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan begin their epic flight. They touched down at several airports in the United States and headed to South America. They continued on to Africa, Asia, Australia, and finally, LYLE, New Guinea.
Amelia and Fred had flown almost 2/3 of the way around the world, and they'd done it fairly quickly. But after that amount of flying time, they must have been exhausted, and here they were facing the most difficult leg of their flight.
From New Guinea, Amelia and Fred faced a grueling 18 hours of flying. They also had to hit a tiny target, Howland Island. 1.5 miles long and 1/2 mile wide, Howland rises a mere 20 feet above the sea. It was like trying to find a speck of dirt in the vast South Pacific.
The difficulty factor on a scale of 1 to 10, piloting from LYLE, New Guinea to Howland Island in 1937, in that aircraft, make it a 10.
Bad weather delayed them for a day. But finally, on July 2nd, at exactly 10 a.m., Amelia and Fred took off. They hoped to land on Howland Island 18 hours later.
Though she had the best navigator in the world sitting beside her, Fred Noonan,
She was responsible for running that airplane. She had to fly the heading. She had to watch the weather. She had to watch the fuel flows. She had to watch the mixtures, the carburetor air, make sure they weren't getting carburetor ice. She was responsible for the airplane maintaining altitude and maintaining trim. All these things were constant. Plus, she had to do the radio transmissions.
Amelia was not competent where radio was concerned. She would never take the time to learn properly. I think it can be honestly said that the radio was the Achilles heel of that flight.
It seems incredible, but Amelia's only link with the world was her battery-powered radio. The Coast Guard cutter Itasca was waiting in the waters around Holland Island. They were ready to communicate by radio with Amelia as soon as she came within range. With a radio bearing, they could rescue Amelia and Fred if anything went wrong. For 16 hours, the flight went smoothly. But then, Amelia's lack of radio experience caused problems.
About 17 hours and 14 minutes into the flight, now we're really getting to the critical part. She reports that she's approximately 200 miles out, and she wants them to take a radio bearing on her, and she whistles into the microphone.
Want bearing on 3105 kilocycles on hour.
She stopped whistling.
Amelia didn't whistle long enough to give the Itasca a constant signal. And what she didn't understand was that whistling wasn't necessary. Any 30-second radio signal would have been enough.
Please repeat last transmission on 7500. I repeat.
They were 19 hours into the flight and an hour behind schedule. Amelia and Fred calculated they should be directly above Howland Island. But when they looked down, all they saw was water.
Fred, I don't see Howard Island.
I don't know where it is. We should be right on top of it.
It's not on my side.
Something was terribly wrong. Instead of keeping her radio line open so the Itasca could help them get back on course, Amelia stopped her radio transmissions. On a previous flight, she had overused the radio and drained her battery. She did not want to make the same mistake twice.
They know they've missed the island, gone past it, but they don't know which side. They have no way of knowing. They have to take a radio bearing. So Amelia does the only thing she can. 20 hours and 13 minutes into the flight, Amelia sends her last message. Her voice is talking very rapidly and very tense.
137 will repeat message. We will repeat this message on 6210.
In her final radio message, Amelia said she was switching frequencies to 6210 kilocycles. The Itasca couldn't reach her on that frequency, so they assumed she had turned her radio to the wrong setting. Frantically, the Itasca tried other frequencies with no luck.
Earhart, this is the Itasca. Come in, over.
We have an emergency. Notify all the ships in the area. Amelia Earhart's plane may be going down. We may be losing her.
That was the last verified transmission ever heard from Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan. They must have ran out of fuel, and within a minute or two, from 1,000 feet, would have had to ditch the airplane into the ocean.
A search effort began immediately. 10 ships, 65 planes, and 4,000 men scoured 250,000 square miles of open ocean around Holland Island. The search was the largest in history for a single plane, and it lasted 16 days. With its gas tanks empty, the plane would float for at least 5 hours. Amelia and Fred had life preservers and a small life raft equipped with emergency supplies, so they could have been afloat for days. But despite the massive search, no trace of Amelia Earhart, Fred Noonan, or the plane was ever found. The nation was in mourning. A unique hero was lost. Next, 7 years after her plane went down, an eyewitness claims that she saw Amelia Earhart alive.
Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan flew 3/4 of the way around the world, some 22,000 miles. Most accounts say they ran low on fuel, crashed, and then died at sea. But eyewitness testimony now suggests that they both survived. Most experts believe Amelia went down somewhere near Howland Island. But incredibly, unconfirmed sightings have placed Amelia and Fred 2,500 miles northwest on the island of Saipan. At the time, Saipan was controlled by the Japanese military. Japan was building an empire and had begun to extend its reach to islands across the South Pacific. But by July of 1944, 7 years after Earhart's plane vanished, American forces had taken control of Saipan. U.S. Army Sergeant Thomas Devine and his unit were among those stationed there.
Soon after my arrival on the island, Lieutenant Liebig, who was our first lieutenant, had secured a Jeep and told me that I was to drive him to Aslido Airfield, which was a short distance away from our bivouac area.
Devine and the lieutenant drove along an isolated road and pulled up in front of a padlocked aircraft hangar.
I'm sorry, sir, this is a restricted area.
While he waited, Devine overheard part of a conversation between a group of Marines.
You know, we got Amelia Earhart's plane in that hangar. You guys wouldn't believe it when we found it.
Suddenly, an official in civilian clothing confronted the Marines.
You people want to knock off the chatter. I want you to sit down, do your jobs, and shut up. Do you understand?
Later on that same day, I heard a roar from the airfield, but we didn't pay too much attention until suddenly it came overhead, very, very low. And you could see the markings on it. It was not a military plane. It was a civilian plane. The marking was very evident, NR 16020. We all looked up. We all wondered what in the world was going on.
Devine wrote down the ID number. It matched the number of Amelia Earhart's plane. That same evening, Thomas saw the plane again, but this time, it was on fire.
And I was aghast to see this plane, the so-called Earhart plane, engulfed in flames. I saw that plane personally on 3 occasions that day. The last time the plane was in flames.
Another soldier stationed on Saipan, former Marine Bob Wallach, also found evidence that Earhart had been on the island.
We're looking through some government-looking buildings, brick buildings. We found this safe. One of the guys was a demolition person that knew, and he thought he could blow the door off the safe, and we'd have something. We thought we were going to be millionaires, you know. But anyway, there was a briefcase that I grabbed, and I thought I had it packed full of money or something like that. To my surprise, it was something I didn't expect to see, but it was full of Amelia Earhart's papers.
Hey, Joe, come take a look at this.
What do you got, Wally?
Amelia Earhart. What's this stuff doing here?
I may have only been 18 years old, but I knew I had a piece of history in my hand.
This is incredible.
Wallach gave the briefcase to a commanding officer. He never saw it again.
I do not believe Amelia Earhart died at sea. I think Amelia Earhart survived the downing.
Buddy Brennan is an Amelia Earhart expert. He interviewed a woman in Saipan who said she witnessed Amelia's death. We went to Saipan and we spoke with the same woman.
This woman was brought ashore by the Japanese. It was said they had captured 2 spy people. The Japanese soldiers brought the spies into town. Many of us went there to see them.
I think they want us to strip.
The Japanese guards made them take off all their clothes, everything they had on their bodies. It was then we could see that one of the spies was a woman. I had never known before a woman who wore men's trousers. Or the things that happened to that woman. The soldiers put her in jail. They removed her jewelry from her hands. Then the Japanese came and gave her rice. She threw it out. When they took her out of the prison, they tied her hands. They blindfolded her. I was working on a farm. I saw a Japanese motorcycle. The woman was in a little seat on the side of the motorcycle. I watched, and they took her to this place where a hole had been dug. They made her kneel in front of the hole. I planted a breadfruit tree near her grave.
In 1987, Buddy Brennan excavated the gravesite. He was only allowed to dig for 12 hours.
We got down to 6.5 feet below what they said would have been the surface in 1944, which is the date Ms. BLAS gave us of having witnessed the execution. And that's where we retrieved the blindfold.
Buddy believes this tattered piece of cloth was Amelia's blindfold. However, he found no human remains. What really happened on Saipan? Did the Japanese actually execute Amelia Earhart? Or did Amelia and Fred Noonan go down with their plane somewhere in the vast South Pacific?
I think if we can raise our airplane and prove once and for all the solution to the Amelia Earhart mystery, it will be something very, very worthwhile for our heritage. We can't afford to throw our heroes away.
When she set out to fly around the world, Amelia Earhart was only 39. After more than a half-century of research and speculation, we know little more now than on the day she disappeared. She remains a true hero, as inspiring in failure as she might have been had she succeeded. Next, a hike in the Mississippi woods turns deadly for a popular teenager. Some think he was killed by drug runners. Picayune, Mississippi. On a warm summer day, Norman Ladner left his parents' country store to go hunting on his family farm. Norman was a popular high school student who loved the outdoors. He knew his family's property, all 122 acres of it, like he knew the back of his hand. So it didn't make any sense that he would be late coming home.
Norman would always be back by 7 to 7:30 in the afternoon or in the evening. And about 7 o'clock, I began to get worried about him because he was very punctual and it was the most unusual.
Norman! Norman!
I helped in the search, but then I decided that it would be best had I waited at the store for him. Perhaps if he was lost, he could come to the store.
Norman! 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 Norman!
I knelt down by him and I felt him and felt he was cold, so I knew he'd been dead for a while. It's a deep shock and a tragedy to come up on and find your own son. Because you could never imagine or think how this could happen or the loss of a child until you've experienced or gone through it.
Norman LADNER, who was just 17, was dead. A single gunshot wound to the head had taken his life. Just after 10 p.m., the sheriff's department arrived. They roped off the area and began their investigation.
Foul play is the first thing that I normally address in the course of an investigation. I ruled it out in this instance because I saw nothing there to indicate that.
After they found him, a deputy came to the store and approached the door. And I said, "Is he dead?" And he said, "Yes." I can tell you it's the most shattering experience anyone can go through.
Yes, sir.
At first I thought it might have been an accident. It looked as though he might have been in a tree nearby and subsequently fallen out of the tree and the gun discharged, etc.
We felt that it was an accident. And even when the coroner came back to the store after the results of his examination, he came up with two deputies and he said he felt that it was 90% sure that it was an accidental shooting.
However, Norman's family was in for a terrible shock. When the official ruling came down, the coroner said that Norman did not die from an accident. He committed suicide.
The coroner's decision was based on the fact that Norman died from a close contact head wound. The bullet entered his right temple and exited his left. It was a very typical suicide wound.
I think that he went back into an area where he felt comfortable, and for reasons that we don't know, that he decided to take his life.
It was impossible for it to be a suicide. I knew my son too well. He enjoyed and he lived life to the fullest. He was happy, he was outgoing, he was not depressed in any way. And he had too many things going for him. They made no attempt to locate the bullet. They never fingerprinted the gun. They cannot say with any facts that his gun was the weapon that was used to kill him.
There were other problems. Norman's wallet with $140 was missing. He had a 1¼ inch long cut on the top of his head. If Norman had committed suicide, how did that cut get there? Authorities said the head wound was caused by this bloody tree root that was found at the scene.
We didn't see how that could happen because falling straight back, you would hit your head on the side or directly in the back, not up in the crown of your head.
Norman's parents began their own investigation. They dug in the dirt area where their son had fallen to see if they could find the bullet that had taken his life.
I remember so well the feeling that I had of having to sift through the dried particles of brain tissue and blood of my son.
We found a bullet that was longer than the bullet that Norman's gun would hold. The chamber was not bored out for the length of that bullet. And it had dried blood and a hair that we examined under the magnifying glass.
We don't have any reason to believe that it was the bullet that was fired that caused the boy's death. Mainly because we feel that the boy was standing at the time the gun was fired, and if that being the case, it would not have been in the ground underneath his head.
We came to the conclusion that he was lying on the ground and he was shot by someone in a standing position.
The LADNERs gave the bullet to a state ballistics expert. But he couldn't tell if it had come from Norman's rifle. And when they were given the bullet back, they claim that it was not the same bullet that they had found.
My boy didn't commit suicide.
A few weeks later, Norman's parents went to the coroner's office to question his ruling. His mother said a stranger interrupted their conversation.
And the wound.
Can I speak to you over here a minute, please?
He said, Mrs. Ladner, don't open this case up. You have other children. I suggest you raise them for your own good. You'll never find the person that killed your son. And then the man left.
Unfazed, Norman's father returned to the area where his son died.
Hey, come here.
300 yards away, he found a strange radio-like device that looked homemade. State authorities said it was not an important clue, but a neighbor suggested that he show it to an ex-narcotics agent who lived in the area.
The former DEA agent said this was a type of device that drug dealers used to signal aircraft by sending out a low-range signal for the proper alignment to drop shipment of drugs.
Norman believes that his son came upon drug dealers in the woods and that they killed them because they didn't want any eyewitnesses. Authorities continue to stand by the coroner's rulings, but Norman's parents say it was nothing less than cold-blooded murder.
We will not stop this investigation, no matter what, until it is finished. We owe it to our son.
It's a great deal of strain knowing that he was murdered and nothing has been done to bring his murderers to justice.
If you have any information about the death of Norman LADNER, please log on to our website at unsolved.com.